Paranormal Road has been brought to you by EVP Mediums. Visit us at evpmediums.com, like us on Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Exploring unknown regions of our reality.
And she looks out and sees these lights in the sky and these different patterns drifting like they were going to land.
Examining the depths of human perception.
I remember when I was awake and I realized I was awake, I started to sort of scan the room and I realized that something was wrong.
Pursuing the elusive and unseen.
Electronics started acting up, ceased to work, overheated.
You have just entered a road of wondrous mystery.
And so when we get around this bend in the road and this group of trees, we look up in the sky and there's this craft, and it is huge.
A place where sometimes our darkest terrors dwell.
I've never seen anything like this, and instantly I could feel the fear.
You've just turned on to the Paranormal Road.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, ignition, liftoff.
And welcome to the Paranormal Road. I'm David.
And I'm Randy.
And tonight, we're not talking about Bigfoot.
Wow.
Hard to believe, isn't it, Randy?
I know. Well, it'll probably get brought up somewhere in conversation.
Not tonight's show. Tonight, we're actually going to share some creepy stuff with you here in the beginning. In the second half of the show, our guest, we have Travis Sanders, who's returning from... You may have remembered him from season 1, a great, awesome medium. And he has a new book out, which we're going to talk about. But first, we're going to talk about some really strange stuff from NASA. The rover that is currently on Mars has a microphone that detects sound, and they picked up very bizarre sound. I don't know how you've heard it, Randy. How would you describe it? It's
kind of out there. I would sort of describe it as a celestial kind of sound, but then it sounds kind of like sonar or something.
Yeah,
almost.
It's bizarre.
Almost like computer generated, sort of. I don't know.
It reminds me of sonar, like submarine sonar or whatever.
Yeah.
So it has the scientists at NASA. It has them kind of baffled. Again, very bizarre sound. It almost sounds like a beacon. And we're going to play that clip for you here in a moment, but it's when I heard this clip, I kind of wow, the realization I'm listening to something on the planet Mars. It's kind of weird to realize that our listeners, you guys, what you're going to hear is actually coming from the surface planet of Mars. So we're going to play that clip for you now. I don't know about you, Randy, or you listeners, but I find that kind of creepy.
It pretty much creeped me out, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, again, it's almost like it's timed intervals. It sounds like some type of beacon, like an electronic beacon or sonar device. Very, very strange indeed. And again, NASA has no explanation for this. They have no clue. The other thing that the rover has been sending back. And it's the strange thing is this sound that they pick up only happens on the midnight Mars. When it's midnight on Mars where the rover is, this sound only occurs around midnight. Now, some people have stated it sounding like drumming, like tribal or Aborigine drumming.
This is different,
Yeah,
right?
it's a different sound than what we just played.
Sounds like a lot goes on Mars.
Yeah, there's a party up there going on. I don't know.
When's the next trip?
52 miles west of Venus or something. But this next clip, though, that we're going to play for you, we'll see what you think, but it's strange. It's a strange beating, tapping noise, and here's that clip now. Yeah, that one's weird. I don't know. What do you think, Randy?
I was listening kind of closely. It's slightly different than the Chicka Wow Wow music and bad porn. Maybe that's what it sounds like on Mars. I don't know.
It's weird. I don't know. It almost sounds like water dripping, but that would have to imply there's rain. And so far as we know, there is no rain on Mars. There's no cars on Mars. Wait a minute, that's a Blondie song. But do believe, and NASA does believe that there is water. Evidence of water, maybe beneath the surface. But
the one part, didn't it kind of sounded like something was throwing rocks.
Yeah, like a tinging, like it may have been.
Like maybe there's a Bigfoot throwing rocks.
Hey, you may be onto something. But it sounds like maybe pebbles hitting the rover. Or the other thing that it reminds me of, like when a radiator, if you have steam radiators, like in our studio, that when they're cooling down, or I guess a better sound that it reminds me of is like a catalytic converter on a car after you shut it off and you hear it cooling off. And because they're picking this up at midnight, or it's always at midnight, could this be the rover, itself, metal cooling? But I would assume that they would have heard that long before now. So I don't know. It's a little bit bizarre, very strange.
Yeah, and that, because it is Paranormal Road, we talk about everything paranormal. So, this kind of leads into what's coming up next, which is going to be our Haddox report.
Yes, but listeners, hit us up on Facebook, send us an email, or send us a message on Paranormal Road Facebook page. Let us know what your thoughts are on these sounds, what you think that they could be, because your guess is as good as ours. Obviously has NASA scientists baffled. In addition, speaking of UFOs and the like, we seem to be in the middle of a flap, a UFO, what they call flap, which is high strangeness and high amount of sightings. The average sightings per month, or reported sightings, has been roughly averaging around 400 per month until September. September spiked to 700 reported UFO sightings in the 1 month alone of September, which is almost double. And according to MUFON, these sightings are much more, they're creditable sightings. So that makes you wonder if we are in the middle of a UFO flap like the summer or the year of 1973. And in that time frame, along with a high amount of UFO sightings in that year, were cattle mutilations. And that leads us to the Haddox report.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
professional UFO investigator and special assignment reporter for Paranormal Road. It's the Haddox Report.
This is William Haddox with the Haddox Report, and I've got something interesting to bring to you this week. Cattle mutilations. Something I haven't covered before, but I have looked into in the past. This is very interesting out of Oregon. 5 bulls were found dead on a ranch that was not easily accessible. They said it was some pretty tricky terrain to actually get there. It was all within a 1.5 mile radius, the rancher said, that discovered these. They had called local law enforcement in to investigate. They have found absolutely no clues to anything and are urging the ranchers to go in pairs and stay armed because they believe somebody intentionally did this, and who knows if they'll be back. A lot of theories have floated around since the story first broke, from different kinds of bacteria and certain carrion bugs that can do similar things but not leaving no trace whatsoever. Very odd. One witness even, or not witness, but theorist had said they think UFOs could be related and that you should look for craters. Because underneath of the carcass could be a crater, which would mean the animal was levitated by a UFO. Whatever, was performed on it was done, and then it was dropped back down to the ground. That was one of the theories put out. State police have said, though, that they have no clues, witnesses, anything, and are urging anybody that might know to come forward. They're also wanting to know if any past cases of cattle mutilations have ever been solved. None to my knowledge. I haven't looked into it extensively, but from ones I have looked into, they're just as unknown as this one. This is one of the more definitely recent events. These haven't happened for quite a while, at least not that have been reported. There was some large-scale mutilations reported back in the 70s over the Midwest United States. Thousands of cattle in similar conditions. Many even had their faces removed, which is very odd. There are a lot of other cultures and things that eat a lot of different organs out of animals and things that would not typically maybe be eaten around here or thought of, but as the rancher states, those organs and things, even blood, could be easily obtained low cost, if not free, at a lot of slaughterhouses. So there's really no reason for anybody to go to that length, just for a food source. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. The FBI back in the 70s also agreed to investigate this on some tribal land where they had got some permission, but before they could start their investigation, the mutilations stopped, and that kind of ended it there. There was a few sporadic cases in the 80s that were similar, but no indications of any natural causes. The sheriff deputy thought that, possibly could have been done to harm the rancher financially for some reason. But one of the deputies on the case, an Officer Jenkins, his thought, which could have some truth to it, it's hard to say, was the occult. People seem to go to that part of the country for whatever reason for ritual practices, whether it be something to do with moon phases or whatever the case may be. There is things like that do happen. So kind of an interesting thing to put together, but no traces of any human activity, and that's very odd to me. If you're a rancher or an outdoorsman in general, a hunter, could be anything, if you spend any time in nature, very quickly you will learn that humans leave their sign everywhere. There's really no cases, nowhere you can go where you won't see some evidence of humans being there, whether it be the paths they make, things they may leave behind. Anything is possible. I've watched different TV programs when they're in some of the most remote, locations on Earth, random islands and whatnot, and you will still find human activity that'll wash up. So, yeah, we leave our trail everywhere we go. That was just an interesting event for sure that came up recently. And something I want to add as well is I would like to get some listener feedback. I'm planning on in the near future adding a second page to my website, or an additional page, I should say, to the UFO Reporting Center, which is Central Ohio UFO Reporting Center.us. You can find me on the website or through Facebook, or get in touch with Paranormal Road on Facebook, and they can get you in touch with me or pass along a message. But what I was considering adding to the reporting center was a page with the different podcasts on it, to where you could listen to it straight through the website. But underneath each episode would be any links to source information, maybe guest information or articles that I'm referring to, like the cattle mutilations or UFO reports. You know, wherever I may come across these different stories, I could put everything there so you could read it more in depth yourself. So I thought that would be something interesting to do. So I'd like some feedback on if anybody would like that, or what you think of it. Any suggestions. That was just something that I wanted to throw out there. But if you have anything to report, UFO related, or any information on anything I cover for that matter, you can do it a couple different ways. You can go straight to the website, Central Ohio UFO Reporting Center.us. On the home page is a little contact section. If you just want to leave a comment about the show, or about me, or the reporting center, or anything else, feel free to leave it there. If you would like to leave a UFO report, at the top of the page you'll see where you can click to fill out a report, and I will be in touch within 24 hours. Confidentiality is number one, as always. I do put all the reports on the reporting center. You can go through and look at everything that I've worked on, and look at the archives of older cases. But the only editing I would do to anybody's report is any personal information I would leave out. And that's why I like when you fill out the form, because it keeps everything separate. Your personal info is separate from the event, so it makes it a lot easier to make sure that nothing personal gets out there. You can go on the Facebook page as well. All the links to that are on the home page as well. You can scroll down to the bottom and click the link to go over to Facebook and like the page, and I try to update it periodically if anything comes out. But that's pretty much what I've got for this week. Just a very interesting story. Cattle mutilations have always been a little bit of an interest, but they don't pop up all that often. But with the recent wave of UFO sightings concerning our military and everything that they're putting out, which is something I plan on covering soon, I just wonder, is there a connection? Because it seems like back in the 70s, there was a huge wave of UFO sightings across the country, and even around the world for that matter. One of the largest, in recent times. And that's also when the very large-scale cattle mutilations were going on as well. So it makes you kind of wonder. In the 80s, there was a smaller wave of UFO sightings, and there was also a smaller, I guess you could call, wave of cattle mutilations. So could there be an uptick in mutilations? Something to definitely keep an eye out for. But as always, I hope everybody enjoyed the podcast. Stay safe and keep looking up.
Thanks a lot, William, for that Haddox report. That whole cattle mutilation thing just creeps me out. I can't imagine walking out into a field and experiencing that whole thing.
No.
And then having to think about what caused it.
Yeah, it's just, especially when it's horses. For me, I'm a horse lover, and that just, no matter what, it's creepy, the whole thing.
Seeing any animal mutilated is horrible. But let's move on to something a little bit happier here, which is our next guest. And some of you might remember from last season, we interviewed Travis Sanders. He is an amazing medium. He considers himself a vintage soul and a modern spiritualist. And Travis he's a very accomplished clairvoyant medium. He's an author, a teacher. He's been working professionally for over a decade. His work and, with the spirit and talking with people, doing readings and things, he's amazing. He's been featured on numerous radio and television programs, including CBS and Hay House Radio, and most notably on A&E Psychic Kids, Children of the Paranormal. He's author of a couple of books too, and one of them we're going to talk about tonight, his newest book. He last season talked about his book, I Am Psychic, So Are You, and his newest book is called Practical Mediumship, and he's going to go over that with us and tell us, how that came about, why he's doing it, and what he expects people to get from it. And I can't wait. Every time I talk to him, I'm right in it. I want to know. I want to learn everything I can. He's kind of like my idol. So I always wanted to be like somebody. I guess I want to be like Travis. I don't know. Who better than Travis to be like? But he's going to go, over his things and what he's done. Tell us a little bit about what he does and how he does it. And one of the things that he mentions, which I think is kind of cool, is he talks about his bio and he says, what does all this mean? He says, everything and nothing. And then he says, I'm just a soul on a journey with a passion just like you.
And we'll be right back on the Paranormal Road with Travis Sanders right after this short break.
So now you're here again, knocking at my door. A little too late for, I'm sorry for. The lights went out 'cause you kept cutting the cord, and I started to fade into your gray. See, I finally opened up my eyes, and I saw me coming back to life. That I'd be better without you inside. It's time to be someone I want to recognize. The future starts right now. I made a reservation, but you never came, so I'm checking out. The fire you stole away, I know one day we'll come back around. The future is now. I waited for you in the passenger seat. There's only so far I can ride in your dreams. While you were chasing everything else but me, I'm starting to break out from your gray. See, I finally opened up my eyes, and I saw me coming back to life. That I'd be better without you inside. It's time to be someone I want to recognize. The future starts right now. I made a reservation, but you never came, so I'm checking out. The fire you stole away, I know one day we'll come back around. The future is now. Down, 'cause the future is now. Not backing down, 'cause the future is now.
The state of Ohio is filled with mysteries, unsolved murders and unexplained disappearances, lost treasures, missing shipwrecks, strange phenomenon, and things that go bump in the night. We explore them all at Ohio Mysteries, a podcast dedicated to the great questions that obsess us in the Buckeye State. I'm your researcher and storyteller, Paula Schleiss.
And I'm your co-host, Steve Yoder. We invite you to join us every week for a new episode about a mystery that's never been solved. You'll find stories that seem vaguely familiar, others that have become legend, and still, more you've never heard of. Subscribe to Ohio Mysteries on your favorite podcast app.
Or visit us at ohiomysteries.com for direct links, as well as photos, videos, news clippings, and more related to each and every episode. And who knows, maybe together we'll find some missing pieces to these puzzles on Ohio Mysteries.
Don't let the negativity of today's world get you sidetracked from your life's journey. Visit It's Your Journey Metaphysical Store at 4750 Cleveland Road East in Huron, Ohio. It's Your Journey is more than a store. It's a place of healing and knowledge. It's Your Journey carries a wide variety of healing crystals and protection stones, salt lamps, books, incense, candles, essential oils, and more. It's Your Journey also offers Reiki, energy healing, personal readings, spirit releasement, and soul retrieval. Live out of the area? No problem. Visit It's Your Journey's website at itsyourjourney.com and shop online. Shipping available worldwide. Or call 419-433-0888. Don't let negative energy stop you. Take charge. It's your journey.
And we have Travis on the line. How you doing, Travis?
I'm well. How about yourself?
Great. It's good to have you back on the Paranormal Road.
Yeah,
thank you for having me back.
We had such a good time talking about your last book and everything that had gone on, and now we want to talk about what you did all summer long. We already told everybody what we did all summer long. Now we want to know what you did and what you're involved in, and tell us about that new book you have out.
So the new book that I just put out is called Practical Mediumship, and it's basically sort of a hopefully what I consider to be a comprehensive guide to developing mediumistic sensitivity in just a very grounded, practical sort of way. I've tended to notice that a lot of the books that are out there only give you so much. They only give a piece of the puzzle, or they'll give you almost everything, and they kind of leave you wondering how these dots are connected. And I know for myself, growing up in a very rural kind of area where I didn't have a spiritualist church or a metaphysical organization, books were the only thing that I had at that particular point as a resource. And so my intention with this book was to really write the book that I wished that I had when I was developing as a kid.
Mm-hmm. And that makes sense, for people who might think that they're medium, but they're not sure, and it kind of helps them figure it out and move forward. So yeah, it's a good idea. We talk about sometimes how we think everybody might have a little bit of a gift and just don't know, and people like you can help them figure it out and see if they really do have a gift and what to do to make it better.
Yeah, absolutely. And, even if it kind of comes down to, too, like what extent of a gift is there, because, I believe that we're not a body with a soul. We're a soul, and we just happen to be experiencing life in a body. So if I'm a spirit, why can't I communicate with the spirit world, and why can't anybody else? That being said, some people might just be able to develop to the point of connecting with their own guides and their own loved ones, and that's okay. And then there are other people who have that potential to sort of be a bridge for other people's loved ones and to sort of pass on evidential information that can kind of confirm that life continues. So regardless of, whether you have an aim of being a professional medium or you just want to sort of develop that connection that you have to your own spirit helpline, I think there's things in this book that everyone can get out of that.
Travis, I mean, how do you? Boy, it seems like I wouldn't want to have your job because I can't even imagine writing a book and how much effort and thought you have to put into that. But how do you? How does your book guide someone through those steps? I mean, do you have I guess a system that you use that's tried and true, or it's just things that you've discovered, in your journey?
When I write, I think my writing style is very sort of nuts and bolts. I'm not into a lot of anecdotes and, illustrating stories. I kind of like to get down to brass tacks. Mm-hmm. And I feel like even though there sort of is a system, because I based a lot of the book off of my weekend intensives that I teach, my intention isn't that there's sort of a cookie cutter style of development, because my first book was more on psychic development, and psychic ability can be developed. Mediumship has to be unfolded. And so kind of what I mean by that is with development, it's very formulaic. If you do A plus B, you will get C. With mediumship, I can outline A and B, but it's really sort of up to a variety of factors such as predispositions that you have and the spirit helpers that work with you at what rate that's going to unfold. And then the other aspect of that is I give a variety of techniques, and they're not all techniques that I use, but I have to take into consideration that just something works for me or doesn't work for me doesn't mean it's going to work or not work for the next person. So I like to give a variety of tools, because one thing might work great for someone else, but it might not work great for you. And so it's just finding the tools and resources that really aid you, and that's okay.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It sounds well thought out. If someone, I guess, how does someone know that they have these gifts? I mean, are there telltale signs that I should have that, like, okay, I've seen these things, I really want to get Travis's book because I think I might be a medium? I mean, is there things that our listeners, can check off, like a checklist?
There's a few things that I think people can look for. So in the mediumistic world, there tends to be a lot of debate over, are mediums born? Can mediums be made? Can everyone develop this? And I think the thing, like I said, I believe everyone can develop a connection with their own spirit team. But when I look at any working medium who really is of service to other people, there's always common factors. Most of the time, they will say that even if they were sporadic, that they had experiences in childhood of some sort of an awareness of spirit, whether it was seeing them or feeling presences or having dreams of dead people. They might not have had chatter or communication, but they had some sort of experiences that were sort of different or unique going back to childhood, but not always, but that's usually something that you hear. The other thing that I tend to notice with a lot of people that are truly gifted is there tends to be this common theme of anxiety, even going back to childhood. But anytime someone, comes to me and they talk about, I have panic attacks or I'm on medication for anxiety, a huge percentage of the time, those people have either psychic or mediumistic predispositions. And a big part of their anxiety is sort of sponging up, either one, if it's more of a psychic level, things from other people, or two, spirits kind of knocking at the door and they don't understand it or recognize it, so their body interprets that outside energy as anxiety.
Travis, could that apply to people who are manic depressants that are, I guess, depressed and they don't know why, or they have these mood swings? Or could that just be bipolarism? I always say that there's when I say this word, I don't mean it disrespectfully, but I always say that there is a fine line between gifted and crazy. And so oftentimes mediums may experience or even think that they have some forms of mental illness. And sometimes it's a little bit of both. But I'm sorry.
For others,
as you were talking there, I just had to look at Randy and point to him.
He did.
When you said mental illness.
It's not the first time he's mentioned mental illness to me, but, I learned to roll with that.
Yeah, I mean, even in extreme cases like schizophrenia, do I believe that there are legitimate schizophrenic people out there? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think on another level, if you go into maybe some of these places or institutions, a lot of these people may be very wide open and just have no control over it.
And it's being vulnerable. I've talked about that before too, and it sometimes seems like there's a really fine line between schizophrenia and actually communicating. I mean, to me anyway, it appears to be that way.
I mean, just being around Randy and watching him and what he does, I've often thought of how many people were institutionalized in the early part of the century in horrific conditions, given lobotomies that may have been just mediums that
absolutely
couldn't understand it at the time, and people thought they were crazy.
Absolutely, and that's why I think it's so important that people who do mediumistic work are also very invested in self-work and very invested in self-care, because that line can be crossed if we're not very grounded people.
Mm-hmm.
And grounded is the key. When I first started to accept all of this, which was very late in my life, I was a nutcase. I really could not draw the line between me, the real world, spirit, everything. I was all over the place. And only after, coming into the shop with you guys and having, Sue and Nancy talk about, are you grounded? Are you doing the right things? Are you making sure you're okay? And once all of that kicked in and I started really paying attention, you have to be grounded. Otherwise, your life is just handed over to spirit and everything goes haywire. At least it does for me.
Well, and I think that brings up an interesting point, because so many times I have people, especially when I teach my more intensive workshops, and I always like to ask people in the beginning, what is your intention? Why do you want to develop this? Why do you want to try to unfold these spiritual gifts? And the one thing that I find is that a lot of people are wanting to communicate with the spirit world, but they don't even have a good understanding of their own spirit and who they are. And so for me, there's a lot of, when it comes to development, there's a lot of foundational stuff that needs to be laid. How do you know your spirit? How do you relate to your own spirit? What does soul and spirit mean to you? And do you know what you feel like? Because if you don't know what you feel like with your energy, how are you going to trust or recognize an external energy who wants to come and communicate? And that's where people start feeling crazy, because they don't know what thoughts are theirs and what thoughts are legitimately spirit.
Right. It's that definition and the line between. And, we do talk about that more and more, even when we go out on, investigations with clients, because we have come across quite a few cases where we go out for paranormal investigation and we find out that the client is attracting the spirits and that they have a gift they don't even know about, and it's just gone all array because they don't know about it.
Right.
So you do have to be able to draw the line. You have to know the difference, and so you're absolutely right. People need to go into it a little more educated. And, that's
absolutely
the great thing about your books. It's giving them that heads up. This is what you need to know.
Yeah, and one of the other things is, people, and this is where I think mediums can or budding mediums, I should say, can encounter a lot of problems. In our society today, we're used to everything at our fingertips in an instant.
Mm-hmm.
And back in, the 1800s, especially when spiritualism was in its prime, you didn't have TV and Wi-Fi and Instagram, and so people's time was spent in the evening sitting for development. And they sat for many years, a lot of these mediums. And nowadays, a lot of people, and I try to specify this when I teach, I'm giving you as much information and hopefully good information that I can over this 10 hours or 12 hours over the next 2 days, but I'm giving you a groundwork for you to continue to build on, because I'm not going to hand you a piece of paper at the end of this 2 days that says, okay, here you're certified to be a medium, and then send you out into the world. It doesn't work like that.
No, not at all. That brings up too with me where people will ask you the question, well, are you certified? Do you have, an education, a background, and what makes you a medium? And it's hard to answer that sometimes. It's like,
Right.
I don't know, I see dead people. So,
and there are some places that will offer things like certifications, but it's one of those things where, at the end of the day, if you can't do effectively what you're claiming you can do, your certification doesn't mean shit.
Right. And, I actually had a medium friend that told me when I said that, I said, well, I don't have a certification. And her response was, honey, if you have a certification, then you are certified as crazy. And she said, you either have it or you don't. And that made a lot of sense to me. I kind of respected her for that, for, just kind of clearing it up, that you don't have to have a piece of paper to tell you that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think education is super important, but we all develop differently. And just because you don't have someone else's authority, their stamp on a piece of paper, doesn't make you any less than the next medium.
Right. And in the beginning, and I have to say it, and it should be flattering to you. The first time I met you, I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to be as good as he is. And then I thought after that, it's like, why did I put myself through all that hell? It's like, we're all individuals, and it's like our friend Phyllis, she told me, she goes, I don't want anybody to be like me. She said, I'm nuts. And she said, I have a good time with it. I have a good time with spirit. And she said, we all see things differently. We're never all going to see and act exactly the same way. And when I did have a chance to, work with her on an investigation, she was right. We clicked enough that she picked up things that I did not pick up, and I picked up things that she didn't, and that then made sense to me. It's like, you know what, she's right. We all have a different way of communicating, and it was amazing. It was amazing working with her, and now I have found out I don't have to be so on guard that I'm not as good as another medium, because we're all good in our own way.
Absolutely.
Travis, is there are you seeing when you do your classes, I guess if there's one thing you can say that you've seen young or budding mediums to make mistakes, what would those mistakes be, or what do you see as a common thing that people do that are trying to develop their gifts but are falling short?
One of the mistakes that I think people, and when I speak on this, I'm going to speak in the terms of kind of focusing on maybe like one-to-one readings, because there's a lot of hands-on stuff that I do in class, because I think that you learn the most in the doing, even though theory and stuff like that is absolutely important. Mm-hmm. But one of the things I think a lot of mediums do is, one, they let themselves be thrown off track by their nose, and I'm going to explain that here in a second. Not the nose on their face, the nose as in the negative response to a question that they may ask. And then the other thing, too, is they assume that all of their information is from one source, and that can really trip a person up. So a few years ago, I was in Lilydale, and I was actually taking a class instead of teaching a class. And the one medium there, he said, I never let my clients tell me no. And there was sort of like this weird look in the room. And he goes, it's not about that my ego can't handle being wrong, but there's a certain power that you work in. There's a certain vibration that you work in that's a little bit different when we're in the everyday state. And when you hear no, you automatically feel defeated, and that energy becomes deflated, and you lose your link. So I tell people, if you don't understand something, that's perfectly fine. I'm a fallible human being, but please, for the sake of this time of the reading, just say, let me think about it, I'm not sure, I'll hold on to that, because sometimes when you let yourself sort of feel defeated by the initial no, you don't even begin to explore all the information that's behind what you are getting that could put the first impression that you had into context. The other aspect of that is, say that a student is doing a practice reading and they're saying, okay, I have a communicator here, I'm seeing red lipstick, I'm seeing a Corvette, and I'm also seeing references to the movie The Godfather. And I think it's a male energy. I feel a male energy here. Who's the male? And they list these things and like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. But maybe the Corvette and The Godfather was the person. And maybe, the other thing was a cousin that they had. And so by automatically assuming it's all one communicator, the sitter tries to clump everything together. I'm not one of these mediums who is opposed to asking questions. Some people say that you shouldn't ask questions because you're fishing. My thing is, I think questions are great, and I have no qualms with letting a sitter help me sort out the information as long as you give the information first.
Mm-hmm.
And I can totally agree with that, because, when I first started to do the one-on-ones, the first time that you come up with something and they look right at you, no, and they say it with such confidence, almost like they're trying to, intimidate you right up front. It's easy to say, oh my God, I'm wrong. They're not at all connecting to what I'm connecting to, and it can shut you down. And
very much so.
And I have actually had, and I'm sure you have too, because you've done way more readings than I have, where the person is so defiant that I will just say, apparently we're not making any connection here, and there's really no need for us to keep moving forward if we're not going to communicate. And I learned that after enough of walking away thinking, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. And now it's become, like you said, I ask the questions. It's like, I'm seeing this. Are you seeing it? No. Well, okay, then let's go further. Let me ask more questions. So you're absolutely right. That whole no just throws you off right away. So I totally believe that anybody new would almost run into a corner and put their head down like, oh, I can't do this, because I did the same thing.
And I think, too, you brought something up about if you're just not connecting with someone, then stating that. And, there are times where I'm 14 years now into this work, and there are still times where I have to, and it happened to me last week, where it just wasn't happening. And I have found that so many times people, and I always give them the option, we can reschedule or I can refer you to someone, but people appreciate that so much, rather than try to labor a reading that's not working or just blow smoke up someone's rear end. People really appreciate that forthrightness and that honesty of just, hey, this isn't happening, and that's okay.
Right. And I've done it too, and I've told people, hey, and I don't know how you feel about it, but I have actually up front said, we may or may not connect, and we may or may not get what you came here for, but we're sure going to give it a try, and let's go from there. And then that kind of, I don't know, just for me, seems like it kind of sets the stage for where we're going with it. And if we don't connect and we don't get what we wanted out of it, hey, we went through the whole thing, we were civil about it, if nothing else, maybe made a little friendship out of it, and we part ways. There are people you can connect with and not connect with, and Phyllis again was awesome about that. She's like, hey, you don't want them all.
There was, back in the days of spiritualism, they had a mindset that I wish people still had when it came to a form of spirit communication, which is that every sitting is experimental. And sometimes experiments are a success, and sometimes they're not.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, and I agree with that. They're not all going to be, a wonderful outcome.
Right.
I guess I have to ask this question to you because of things that have happened to me. How do you feel about when you are doing a reading one-on-one with somebody and you pick up on something that is not so rosy in someone's future, but you just don't know if you want to bring it up? It's not life-threatening, and it's not a horrible thing. It's kind of like a bump in the road. Do you feel like you really have to tell them that? Like it's your duty to tell them? Or do you feel like maybe they need to experience that bump to get through their journey forward?
I usually will give everything. And I think, too, discernment is such an important thing. And so every situation, I think, is going to be a little bit unique. But, kind of my mindset and my guidelines, my rules with my spirit helpers that work with me is I only want to see something if it's helpful in some way. So I often, too, will remind people, if I'm seeing something and it's not so great, then you're getting the heads up that a lot of people don't get, and you have the power to change it. The future's not set in stone. Lessons can be, we can sort of dictate maybe the intensity of certain lessons. Like, for example, and this is an extreme example, I'm not a predestinist person, but say someone was supposed to be in some sort of an accident to kind of shake them up and change their way. They have a choice if they're going to drive 30 miles an hour or 50 miles an hour, if they're going to wear a seatbelt or not wear a seatbelt, if they're going to go on the highway or a side street. So just because I see something, it's not necessarily the specific situation. It's more or less the essence. And really just always, every reader, regardless of whether they're working psychic or mediumistically, it should be about empowering the person to kind of take control. And as long as we kind of give that caveat, I think most people take it well.
I agree. I mean, that's just kind of a personal thing of mine. I have actually said to people, there are certain things that you have to endure on your journey through life, and I'm not going to change your path. But if I see something that I think is going to be horrible, that you should not have to endure, I'm going to give you that heads up. But if it's something that's just a little bump or hiccup along the way, then I'm going to tell you, beware of an upcoming hiccup. But I'm not going to tell you the whole story, because I feel like it's something you need to learn, or you need to do, or that was, predestined, I guess you'd say, by a higher power, that hey, you need to do this, or you need to endure this to make you a better person or make you a stronger person. And I might withhold details just because I know it's not life-threatening or that horrific. And I brought that up to somebody once, and they were kind of in my case about it. That's wrong. You need to tell them. But that I just wanted your take on it, because sometimes it helps to have someone else back you up, especially for me. Having you back me up makes me feel better.
Well, yeah, again, it's that discernment thing. Just sometimes you may get some information, but you also get the knowingness with that information that there's either a way in which to deliver it, or that there are certain things that you might supposed to be holding on to, because maybe a person doesn't need to know. So even though generally, like when I teach, I always tell people, give what you get, I think as you get a little further into it, there are certain cases where a discernment is required.
Mm-hmm. I actually had a reading once, and I wanted to kind of throw that by you too, where, and it happened out at the shop. The woman came in and just sat down, and I got absolutely nothing. She walked in the door. You know how it was like that blank look, like there was nobody in there. And when she sat down, I said to her, what are you here for? And because I could just pick up, there was absolutely nothing. She goes, I don't know. I said, so you don't know why you came in here? She said, no, I just thought it would be cool to come and get a reading. And I said, well, why would you just think it's cool? You had to have something in mind, or something unfinished that you wanted to complete or something. And she just gave me a blank stare and said, no, there's nothing. I was floored. I literally drew a total blank. And I said, well, maybe we could talk about the weather, but other than that, why, or do you just, do this regularly? What is the deal? And literally, we just sat there for a few minutes and talked. And I said, I don't think we're getting anywhere. So, if you want to come back and talk at another time, or if you want to schedule with somebody else, she just left blank. So I don't know if that happens to you, or it was just my lucky day, or what. But
sometimes I will get a client where it's just there's just nothing there. When I work, it's almost like the atmosphere around my body feels a little thicker. And there are some days when I get up in the morning and I know I have clients, that atmosphere, I don't feel that there, and I can just tell that, well, it's not going to work today. And then I have to, and then, I sit with them anyways, and I try, but I'm usually right, but it's just not going to work today. And that's just something where I have to explain to people, like, hey, I don't know why this happens. You may be meant to hear something better through a different medium. Divine timing can be usually when someone comes back a second time, it's fine. But then other times too, depending on what level I'm working off of, when I'm focusing more on a psychic level and I feel stuck, I used to just kind of terminate the reading at that point, but I've learned that a lot of times that feeling of nothingness or that feeling of stuckness can be a metaphor for a stuckness that person feels. And once I vocalize the stuckness, then things start to flow and get unstuck. But most people do come in with an intention. Even if you ask them in the beginning and they say, oh, I'm just open to whatever, there's still sort of an unspoken intention or something that they're really hoping to hear from. Or someone, or something that they're hoping to hear about. So, I think it's rare that people come in and they literally have nothing that they would really like to examine.
Leave it to you, Randy, to get the rare one.
I got the one. Because
you got the one.
She had nothing. And I got nothing either, so... But, that, other than that, the rest of the day went great. It was just, thank God she was at the end of the day.
Well, and I think
a
lot of times spirit tells us what we need to know. And she just, God forbid, like, sometimes people's lives are just fine.
Yeah, but let's not stir the pot and make it bad if it's good.
Right.
Travis, one of the things in the time that I've known you that I really admire about you is that you have a very positive energy. You keep within the light, and taking it from seeing you and how you respond, excuse me, and how you interact with spirit and people. When we go out and do our investigations, unfortunately, when we started doing this years ago, long time now, but we started to realize that why are people's houses haunted? Well, it's more likely the people are haunted, as Randy brought up earlier, is that it's not surprising to us to find that one or more of the family members are gifted, and that's why the activity is so high, is because that person's bringing them in. But one of the things we've seen, not in all, but we've had a few clients that were not going to be happy until we told them there was a demon in their house. Or we would, do a cleansing, but they would focus, and actually they would bring in these negative entities. Does your book address, or do you in your class, or how would you tell our audience? I guess the biggest way to get through to people, is that what you put out there is what you're going to get back. It's a matter of thought, and I firmly believe that entities are attracted based upon your thought and what you're allowing to come in. How would you help people that are, going through this as a new experiencing medium or trying to develop this to block themselves from these very negative and real entities?
I always put emphasis when I teach, especially in the beginning stages when we're working on laying a foundation. I always put emphasis on natural law or universal law or spiritual law or whatever you might want to call it. And the one that most people are familiar with is law of attraction. Mm-hmm. And in mediumship, the two that we really function out of is vibration and attraction. And so when I teach, I always tell people, part of communicating with the spirit world is raising your vibration, because spirit is pure consciousness. They don't have a dense physical body like we do. And if you are focused on being a bridge of communication for someone out of service, out of love, out of healing, then that is the only experience that the spirit world can give you. I think a lot of times people who are, and don't get me wrong, I think people experience legitimate paranormal happenings, but kind of to touch on what you said a moment ago, there are some people who just are hell-bent on being haunted and infested. And in some ways, I think people a lot of the times haunt themselves. And as they are seeking sort of validation for the external demons, on some level, I think they're hoping that that's going to resolve some of their inner demons. And they don't want to really do the work. They'd rather have a team or something come in and say, X, Y, and Z is in shambles because there's this darker entity or things like that. And I really believe that, we get out of life what we put into it. And a lot of times, too, people become hyper-focused on something. And it may not even be what they think. A lot of times, I see this working in the shop. I get a lot of interesting ghost stories, and I just sit there, but people, they have an experience, and because of these TV shows and all this stuff, they automatically jump to, it's a demon or it's a guy with a knife or, things of that nature. And it's like, maybe that was just grandma moving the glass to tell you that she's okay. So I think our state of mind really does have an influence on the spirit world and how we experience it.
It's kind of like, what spiritual goggles are you looking through? If you're looking through the negative, that's what you're going to see. But if you choose and focus on, okay, let's look at this realistically and not jump to conclusions and open yourself up to the possibilities, they might see something completely different.
And I know in the last interview we did, we talked a little bit about how when it comes to the spirit world, I really only focus in the lane of those who've crossed over and bringing messages of survival through. But I think a lot of times some people, it's like if you go looking for the boogeyman and you're hell-bent on finding the boogeyman, you're going to prove to yourself that there's a boogeyman to be afraid of.
Right, law of attraction.
Yeah.
And Dave can tell you sometimes too, when we'll go on an investigation and I'm, doing my thing, walking through the house, and I'm listening to their story and, listening to spirit babble at the same time, that I have looked right at Dave and everybody else and said, I need to talk to the client alone. And I'll just take them off. I'm like, okay, now what's the real scoop? There's spirit activity here, but what's going on with you that's bringing them here? Because there are things, that are in the client's life that are causing, spirit activity that is similar in intensity that needs to be addressed. And I don't know how many times it's actually happened where they'll just, this is going on or that's going on. It's like, well, yeah. So why do you think you wouldn't attract a spirit that maybe had similar things happening to them? So now you've got your problems and spirit problems.
Right.
And, it is law of attraction.
And I think a lot of times, too, I always say our external world and our external experiences are always a mirror of what's on the inside. And I'm sure you see this sometimes with your investigations. Maybe you go and, you help a particular client, and that things might be good for a while, but then they start experiencing the same things
Right.
because they haven't shifted internally.
Right. And we're starting to be able to walk away from the case, and as soon as we're leaving in the car, we're like, oh, how long before spirits are back doing the same thing again? Because we know that the client isn't going to change what they're doing.
Right.
And they're not going to continue to cleanse or take control of their home like they should. And usually we end up getting a call. They get, call us back. It's happening again. So we just have to remind them, hey, what did we tell you?
Which is why I leave that kind of work to you guys. I don't have time for that.
Thanks, Travis.
Well, Travis, it has been phenomenal to have you on the show. I can't believe the time's up already. And before we, sign off, can you tell, our listeners, how can they get your book? What's the best way to get it? And maybe even if they're locally, how they can sign up for classes. And I believe you also give webinars, correct?
I've done some stuff with live. I haven't quite done the webinar thing yet. I'm still kind of looking for the right platform with that. But, the best way, one, to get a hold of me in itself is just my website, psychictravissanders.com. As far as the book goes, Amazon, if you're not local, is the easiest route. If you are local to sort of the Great Lakes area in Ohio, come to the shop that I'm at. It's Your Journey. I'll sign your book. I'm more than happy to talk to you. And if you are interested in any of the classes, I do list them all on my website. There's several things kind of going on this month too. October's kind of the busy season in this world. And the same information should also be on the It's Your Journey website as well.
Great. So they can order your book through It's Your Journey website as well, correct?
They should be able to, yeah.
Okay. Wonderful.
Well, Travis, again, thank you. You're an amazing person. What you do, your books, talking to you personally, anyone that's had a reading, your reviews are outstanding. And yes, I do want to be like you someday. So I will follow through, and I will always question you on things, because to me you are a mountain of knowledge. So keep up the good work. We were very honored to have you back on the show, and we hope everything goes wonderful for you in your book and future books.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you guys so much.
And that wraps up tonight's show. If you like what you're hearing, if you like Paranormal Road, the best way that you can support us is by sharing us on your Facebook page, writing comments. If you're listening to us by iTunes, please give us a 5-star rating if you like us that much, and give us a comment and your feedback. If you're listening through Podbean or other platforms, give us a rating and subscribe or follow us. All these things help push us up in the search engines for people to find us on this paranormal road.
And it gives us the energy and the support we need to keep moving forward, meet new people, come up with new topics. It's as much a learning experience for us as it is the listeners, and it makes us proud to know that people are listening and that they enjoy what we talk about.
Yes, and it means the world to us when you send us your comments. Again, the best way to reach us is just send us a message on Facebook on Paranormal Road. That would be the quickest response, or send us a message at podcast@evpmediums.com. You can send us an email, podcast@evpmediums.com. And again, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week.
Paranormal Road has been brought to you by EVP Mediums. Visit us at evpmediums.com, like us on Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.